Hello, and welcome to another episode of History of Thought, the show that questions life and helps you elevate your life. I'm Zaina Hafiz, and in today's episode, we will discuss three main Greek philosophies: the idea of Heraclitus, Parmenides, and Plato. We have Xavier Omar Rohit with us today, and we will discuss the ins and outs of those three philosophers and offer listeners a special surprise at the end. Our first guest today is Omar. He is the head of the philosophy department in our local college. He's going to share with us the ideas of Heraclitus. So, hi Omar, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so my first question today is, what is the essence of Heraclitus' philosophy?
So, Heraclitus was a pre-Socratic philosopher who lived in the ancient Greek city of Ephesus around 500 BCE. His philosophy was highly influenced by the natural world, and he believed that everything in the universe was in a state of constant change, from the smallest particles to the largest celestial bodies. He famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice," meaning that everything is always in motion and nothing remains the same. Heraclitus believed that the universe was governed by a universal law, which he called Logos. Logos represented the interconnectedness of all things and the natural order of the universe. It was the organizing principle that kept the universe in balance, and it represented the harmony and balance of opposites. For example, day and night, hot and cold, and life and death were all opposing forces that were necessary for the natural order of the universe. Heraclitus emphasized the importance of embracing change and impermanence, and believed that the key of living a fulfilling life was to accept and adapt to the ever-changing nature of the world around us. He believed that change was not to be feared, but rather embraced as an opportunity for growth and renewal. He famously said, "The only constant is change," which emphasized the idea that everything is in a state of flux and that the world is constantly evolving. Additionally, Heraclitus stressed the value of self-examination, critical thinking, and the pursuit of wisdom in order to attain a deeper understanding of the world and our place in it. He believed that individuals should constantly question their beliefs and assumptions and seek to attain a higher level of understanding. He argued that true knowledge came not from the accumulations of facts, but rather from a deep understanding of the underlying principles in the universe. In relation to the movie, it can be interpreted as a modern-day illustration of a philosophical concept of a philosophy, which states that everything is in a state of constant flux and nothing stays the same. The main character of the movie, Phil Connors, is forced to relive the same day over and over again, which represented the idea that is a never-ending cycle of repetition and change. Through his experiences, Phil learns to accept and embrace the impermanence of life, a central tenet of Heraclitus' philosophy. So, in summary, the essence of Heraclitus' philosophy is the idea that the universe is in a constant state of change, and that the key to living a fulfilling life is to accept and adapt to the impermanence. He emphasized the importance of the interconnectedness of all things, the balance of opposing forces, and the pursuit of wisdom and self-examination. His ideas continues to resonate with people today and have had a lasting impact on philosophy and also Western thought.
Okay, so my second question is, in your opinion, what made him one of the greatest philosophers to this time? What made him stand out during his time to this day?
So what I feel that So I feel like Heraclitus was considered one of the best philosophers of his time due to several factors. First of which is his ideas were revolutionary and challenged the prevailing wisdom of his era. He rejected the idea of stable, unchanging universe and instead proposed that everything was in a state of constant change. This was a radical departure from the more static and traditional views of his contemporaries. Secondly, I feel like he became one of the best philosophers was because of his famous statements and the way he expressed his ideas through his quotes. For example, the one that I said before, his famous saying, "You cannot step into the same river twice," encapsulated his belief in the constant flux of the universe. This approach of his expression made his ideas more accessible to a wider audience and helped establish his reputation as a thinker. And as a thinker, he's a more of a critical thinker and a self-examinator. He encourages individuals to question their beliefs and assumptions in order to attain a deeper understanding of the world. All in all, his ideas were revolutionary, and the way he expressed his philosophy is what made him one of the greatest philosophers of his generation, and till this time, be the most influential in the Western world. Yeah.
Okay, those are all my questions I have for you today. Thank you so much, Omar, for those wise words. Now we'll move to our second guest. Coming up next, a banker whose life passion is philosophy. He might have read every single book talking about philosophy. Our second guest for today is Rohit. He's going to introduce a completely opposing perspective to Heraclitus, introducing us to Parmenides. Parmenides was actually influenced by Heraclitus, making him have his own thoughts on how his life works. Hi Rohit, thank you so much for being with us today. My first question for you is, can you please just introduce to us the basics of Parmenides' perspective?
The central vision of Parmenides' work is that change is an illusion. Appearances change, but not essence, which is later reflected in Plato's theory of forms, which claims that the observable world is only a reflection of a higher, truer reality.
Amazing perspective. My second question for you today, Rohit, is, in your personal opinion, how did Parmenides think of that completely different idea when he was already influenced by Heraclitus? Heraclitus was a philosopher before Parmenides. How did he think of that very opposing idea?
Parmenides was a younger contemporary of Heraclitus, who claimed that all things are constantly in motion and that the first cause, the basic stuff of life, is change itself. Parmenides' thoughts could not be further removed from that of Heraclitus, and in that, Parmenides claimed nothing moved. Change was an impossibility, and that human sense perception could not be relied upon for the apprehension of truth.
Wow, that was a very interesting perspective on life, huh? What do you guys think? Do you agree with Parmenides' ideas? Let us know your opinion in the reviews. Thank you so much, Rohit, for joining us. Last but definitely not least, our final guest for today's episode, Xavier. Xavier is a high school philosophy teacher, and he's going to talk about Plato. I personally believe we all subconsciously live life with some of Plato's ideas. Xavier, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, my first question for you today is, how did Plato view life?
So, in my opinion, I've always thought that Plato had a knack for understanding the world. He's an inquisitive mind, you could say. He had always asked the questions of why and why and why. So, in my opinion, this mindset on its own is extremely powerful, as most people in the philosophical world had this strength applied to them, the ability to want to learn more and to know more. His view on life is very subjective towards most people, since he sees things as the way they are. in a very rational point of view where he just questions, researches, and compiles those answers that he finds together. He's an extremely interesting individual once you learn about him, and I believe that he is truly ahead of his time. And the way he perceived the world was nothing like the average Joe. In my opinion, he was truly one in a million.
He sounds like he was a very interesting person. So, my second question is regarding the movie a few students have watched called Groundhog's Day. How would Plato approach that situation?
Yes, I gave out a piece of work for our students to watch the movie and relay back to me what their opinions were. So, in the movie, here's a good situation. When I first watched the movie when I was younger, I thought about how Plato would have seen it. Firstly, he would try to rationalize everything that was going on. The why, the what, the when, the where, and most importantly, the why. In my opinion, Plato would have asked time and time again to find a reason and rationalize the ways that he could have approached the situation without causing any damage if possible, both to his mindset and the environment around him. His approach would be logical and strategic, unlike Bill Murray in that movie, since he was quite chaotic and all over the place. So, overall, Plato would see the situation as a way to learn in some kind of infinite paradox time glitch where he could ponder the great mystery of the universe without ever needing the fear or regret of doing what he did. That will be all.
Thank you so much for teaching us about such an amazing philosopher, and thank you for being with us today.
You are absolutely welcome.
And with that, we are done with our episode today. We talked about very retrospective topics. They definitely made me rethink the way I'm living my life. Sometimes we get too blinded with our life's business, but every once in a while, you have to stop for a minute, look into our lives, and really consider if we're truly happy. Sometimes we gotta change our perspective on life. I'm asking you to think about the 3 people we discussed today and see which idea resonates with you the most. We have Heraclitus, Parmenides, and Plato. Heraclitus believes that everything is changing and everything is and not at the same time. On the other hand, Parmenides believed that every existing thing and their changing forms are only the appearance of a single eternal reality, and that the claim of change is only an illusion of the senses. Lastly, we discussed Plato. I believe that Plato is very similar to us in our way of thinking. Humans naturally ask why a lot during our daily lives. We're always looking for answers, and I personally believe that if we looked into Plato's perspective more, he's gonna help us try to understand life a little bit better. Thank you so much for listening to History of Thought, and of course, a huge thank you to our guests for joining us today on today's episode. It was incredibly informative. So before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review. Then stay tuned for next week's topic. Thank you.